All right, so here's the last part for compound inequalities, and this time we will be talking about other ways on how we can show inequality. So typically we do graphing, correct? And so today we'll be working on some interval notation. So an interval notation is used to describe an interval based on what graph you are seeing on the number line, okay? Now we have a couple of symbols symbols that we use when we are writing an inequality using the interval notation. So first, we use the parenthesis, okay? So we use the parenthesis if our inequality involves less than or greater than simple, okay? And it simply means that the endpoints are not included. So imagine if you see a graph with a hollow dot, and also you know that it's either a regular greater than or less than. So when you write it in interval notation, it will be using a parenthesis, okay? So hollow dot is the same as parenthesis, okay? The solid dots, on the other hand, uses the square brackets, okay? So the moment that you have solid dots, or when your inequality uses the equal to symbol, then the endpoints are included, okay? Now, Miss, how are we going to show the arrows, okay? Remember, we have like continuous arrow to the left or continuous arrow to the right and things like that. So those arrows, symbols, are represented by the infinity sign. So it continues forever either on the positive direction, so that's going to the right, or it goes forever to the negative direction, so that's when you are trying to represent pointing to the left, okay? So how does this look like? I'm going to show you some examples here, okay? So if you're going to take a look at this particular example, so the first one we have is x is greater than or equal to 2. So in graph form, this is how it would look like. Now in interval notation, so you would see that, okay, it's greater than or equal to 2. So it will start, there will be a graph on the left. It's either a point or a hollow dot or a solid dot on the left, and it will be pointing to the right, correct? And so if you're going to see, you always start from the left side of the graph. It is a solid dot on 2. And so as you can see, we have a bracket on 2 because it's a solid dot. And where does it go? It's pointing to the right, and so it's going to the positive infinity direction, and the infinity always is closed by a parenthesis. So your parenthesis is with hollow dots and with infinity, okay? Now let's have this next example. You see here, x is less than 2. So our arrow is pointing to the left. So if you're going to take a look at your number line, where do we start? We start with the arrow, okay? And it is pointing to the left, and so we start from negative infinity. And where does our inequality end? It ends at positive 2. But because we have a hollow dot on positive 2, you will see that you have a parenthesis on positive 2. Okay, for compound inequalities, okay, if you have both of them are less than, like this, so 1 less than x less than or equal to 5, okay, you will see that they get connected, okay? So how are you going to write this in interval notation? So take a look at the left. Where did it start? Your graph started at positive 1, and it's a hollow dot. That's why you see here it is a parenthesis on positive 1, okay? Your graph ended until positive 5 with a solid dot, and you can see here that 5 has a bracket, okay? And if you have the or, so same thing, okay? Where did you start here on the left side? It's the pointed arrow to the left, and so that starts with a negative infinity, and the first part of the graph ended at negative 3 hollow dot, and you can see it is a parenthesis on negative 3. There is that space, and so you can see we're using or on this example. So or, okay, now where did our next graph begin? Solid dot on positive 4, and so it's a bracket on positive 4, and where does it end? To positive infinity, and so you can see that this is our notation, okay? So let's see if you understood what will be the graph and the inequality for this, okay? So what is the graph of bracket -4, 6? All right, let's start with that. So remember, it's just so difficult to get a straight line. You gotta forgive me about that. Okay, so let's try here. So this is our number line, okay? You have -4, okay? And you have +6. It's over here, okay? So according to this notation, the first thing that we see is going to be a solid dot on -4. How do we know it's solid? It's because of the bracket. So we will have a solid dot on -4 until we have a hollow dot on 6. Why? Because of that parenthesis. Okay, so it means that the graph is from here going here. Okay, solid dot on -4, hollow dot on +6. So this is how the graph would look like. Now, how will the inequality expression, how will it look like? So as you can see, we have something that is greater than, so from here, just looking at this part, let me use a different ink color, okay? Just looking at this part of the graph, okay, you know that you have something that is x is greater than or equal to -4, okay, because it is going to the right, okay? As for the other half, let me use a different color again, just so it's clear. So for this other half of the graph, you have an expression that is x is less than +6. Okay, so how will you be able to combine this? Now, as you can see, -4, if x, okay, so if we are going to write it in a three-part inequality, x is going to be here in the middle, x is less than 6, it's over here. And as you can see, x has the opening for the greater than here expression here. So it will have the open less than or equal to, and then it will be -4. So this is your inequality that has the interval notation of bracket -4, 6 parentheses, okay? And of course, I have the rest of it. So let me just erase all the ink here. I hope you were able to copy those examples. All right. So for this one next, x is less than or equal to -1 or x is greater than 2. Write down the graph. What is the graph and what is the interval notation? Try it out. Go ahead. So if you are going to graph, this is how it would look like, okay? And writing it in interval notation, again, the technique, just start looking at the graph from the left, okay? So as you can see, we started with the arrow, and so it is from -infinity, and then the graph ended with a solid dot on -1, and so we have that bracket on -1. It uses the word or, so put it there. Where did our second part of the graph start? It's a hollow dot on +2, so we have a parenthesis on +2, and then it ends with a positive infinity, and so that's why it has the positive infinity parenthesis, okay? So to summarize, you find the solutions of compound inequality, either identifying the solution sets of distinct inequality where they overlap, or you can also combine the solution sets to form a larger solution set, okay?